Hello all, my name is Kumar, and thank you for joining us today. I am part of the Apigee Customer Success function and work with customers like T-Mobile as part of their digital journey. Today we will be learning about key business and technical aspects of T-Mobile's digital transformation journey, ranging from key business drivers, design principles, architecture and technology principles, as well as winning hearts and minds of people internally, as well as other lessons learned. And to share this story today with us, we have, I'm very excited to have Himanshu Kumar from T-Mobile with us to share the story about becoming the uncarrier. Himanshu is a key member of the T-Mobile Integration Center of Excellence, leading and focusing on their API roadmap and leveraging those to drive e-commerce initiatives at scale. Joining Himanshu is Paul Williams, a principal architect within the customer success function at Apigee. He has been working very closely with Himanshu and others at T-Mobile as part of this transformation as well. Before I hand it off to Himanshu, just a quick note that if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A window throughout the presentation. We will go through those towards the end of the webcast. Also, please note that this content will be available on various forums that Apigee has, including our YouTube channels, as well as SlideShare and the Apigee community. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Himanshu. Himanshu, please take it away.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's great to have you all join today to share our experience and journey that we went through and we are going through. So it is very important to set the context of why things matter and how we do things and why we need to change the way we do things. In today's business environment, as you all would have seen and experienced yourselves, the agility to survival and thriving as well as disrupting is, agility is the key to surviving, disrupting, and thriving in any of the business landscape that you are in. And at T-Mobile, we definitely think that we ourselves have transformed, as our CEO many times likes to say, a broken wireless industry, right? So there are many tenets of anyone going through a transformation. There are many tenets of it, IT being one of those. So I would request that everyone understands that as well, that it's just one aspect of it. There are broader themes and broader initiatives that achieve our overall goal. But being digital is a key enabler in this. And we certainly hope that it gives you ideas and ways of thinking differently that helps with your initiatives as well as challenges in your domain of influence as well as your organization. So today's webinar, I think we have kind of broken down into various topics that we will be covering in depth. First of all, many of you definitely know who T-Mobile is, but I'd like to take a moment and kind of share who we are through various marketing, as well as I'm sure many of you are T-Mobile customers. You have experienced how we interact with customers and what we like to call our uncarrier way of doing things. So what is uncarrier all about if you don't know? How uncarrier demanded that we become digital inside and transform our way of doing things internally, and how digital transformation and API first is happening at T-Mobile that enable that uncarrier on the inside. And along the way, we share our learnings and API wisdom with you all. So Paul has been part of Apigee team along with many other senior colleagues from Apigee, and has been with us for a long while through this journey. Paul, anything you would like to add before we get going deeper dive into any of this?
Yeah, well, hello everyone. My name is Paul Williams. I am a principal architect at Apigee, which means that it is part of my responsibility to ensure that my customers have success in implementing API programs in the way that they see fit. And I will say that T-Mobile is a wonderful example of a company who a way of transforming the way that they do business using APIs. And I think it's going to be a really interesting case study for how that can actually work. And it is, as was said before, it's equal parts technical and human, because we have to rethink in some ways how and why we do what is done. And so keep that in mind as we go through. As we said, we've got a Q&A section. We'd love for you to ask any questions that you've got, and try to get through them towards the end, or maybe you can interject some if they're especially pertinent. So please feel free to type in those questions, and then let's get going.
Thanks, Paul. So T-Mobile, we are the uncarrier. We provide the wireless services, and we are fastest growing wireless company in America. Just a few days ago, we announced that we are reaching about 70 million customer base, 69.4 to be exact, and we are the third largest wireless company in the U.S. But if you have been following us, I'm not sure, just 3 years ago, we were in a different business landscape where we were really having to innovate ourselves out of challenging situations, which are growth and how do we interact with customer satisfaction and growth. So all that journey is encapsulated in the uncarrier moves, how we got here where we are. And uncarrier is our CEO, as I like to say, uncarrier is the way we do things differently. We are not bound to any rules, and we do things that helps customers achieve what and solve customers' pain point every day. So if you have been part of this journey with us as a customer or as a partner, you would know that in just a short span of 2 to 3 years, we have made these transformative moves, 12 of those, and those are major moves that transform business and IT systems. But not only these 12, but there are constantly the changes that keep happening in our systems that help us align us towards achieving these things. Many of these moves are different way of doing business, significant changes to business processes and systems behaviors and capabilities. It's important to understand that context because what I'm trying to underscore here is the amount of changes or type of changes are that significant that that traditional way or normal way of doing changes or supporting these wouldn't be sustainable. And
Himanshu, did it really take you a different way of thinking about how you did projects in order to implement some of these?
Yes, definitely. So we have gone through major things like transformative moves where we re-architect our whole systems, the entire stack of systems. Those are called like universe transformative projects and programs, not projects, that we rethink our entire systems and stack. And that, as exciting as it sounds, complicates things even more. Because now that while we are doing all that, we are not stopping at what happens with our customer interaction and capabilities that is needed to support today's customer base. So it literally doubles the problem. And how we manage all that, how we navigate through all those additional challenges that those next generation of IT systems bring, with our designs and ideas, and APIs being the forefront of that. So I will go into that next, as this rate of change that the current systems and capabilities that business wants to bring to our customer, as well as the new transformative systems that are going in the background, the frequency and the nimbleness that these need, so that you don't take out any availability of these systems, or you always have these things available while you keep on adding new features to systems. So all that is unprecedented. With our growth comes exciting opportunities where other our business partners or other innovative apps and entrepreneurs that want to integrate with us, all those challenges, all those opportunities are coming, and that's how we think that APIs are the ways to solve them. And self-sufficiency of these solutions, like people being able to serve themselves, I think that's the key to it. So to answer to your question, Paul, maybe like in another way would also be that not only do we need to solve the problem, we need to think ahead and solve them and keep them ready so that people can, internal as well as external, can self-serve themselves.
And why is it that is important to the transformation process?
So, I mean, the speed to market is the key here, right? So, and we cannot achieve that using a linear way of imagining a business offering and then getting to the drawing board of designing a solution for it and then rolling it out with all the impacted and engaged applications, teams, and systems in this whole complex ecosystem. We have to think ahead. We have to plan we have to kind of be one with business and have a vision that and solution that is kind of nearly ready for people to consume. Once we have self-serve, people come in and try to consume these capabilities. If there are any adjustments needed, then either we have tools and technologies that helps us adjust that minor things and enable them to get going faster. So ability to bring these capabilities and experiences to our customers and allow our business teams to put out new and imaginative products, offers, and solutions, that is the key. And I think that that cannot be achieved in a kind of a linear fashion or a waterfall method. We need to be agile. We need to be have the IT systems and solutions that can, without a cascading and without a kind of linear impact to each other, it has to be self-sufficient and able to have the capabilities that are easily managed. Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point, but it sounds to me like what we're really looking for is a frictionless environment where developers are free to innovate on top of the existing systems in ways that may not have been anticipated at the time they were created. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. And we, developers, have two tenets, and we are trying to treat them ubiquitously, internal and external. So our customer experience and journey are the key drivers of keeping these things ready on shelf. Like we ourselves look at what would be the critical customer experiences that would be needed. and keep them ready for internal as well as external developers. Yep, okay. Absolutely.
Great.
So while doing this, right, while trying to achieve this transformation or different way of doing things, it's not one thing. It's a kind of it's a combination of things, and that's what is the challenge that, and especially when you try to do it at scale in a large organization like us, it has many facets of it. It has people aspect of it. It has a lot of process aspect of it, and technology is definitely enablers. But we all being in the technology, we think that's the simpler part. That would be definitely my view. That given a technology, we can definitely make use of it. But how to put the pieces together that works in what you, Paul, rightly said, in a frictionless environment, right? That is the challenge. So our transformation kind of encompasses transformation or different way of doing how we put the teams together, how the teams approach these capabilities, what are the processes that we need to transform and move and do differently, and how we leverage the technology to achieve those goals. So I'll go a little kind of try to elaborate what I mean by these. So we literally we have been having the project-based approaches, right? So we have traditional lot of our development few years ago would have been what people would say waterfall. We definitely are doing agile even then, but it wasn't like the only way of doing things. And solutions were project-based. And we have lots of processes in which we take our solutions from one stage of development and take it to production. That is kind of a very complicated and lots of roadblocks. Let me put it this way. I'm sure there are better ways to put it. So all those have to be rethink. So we are now organizing what we call as a capability. We try to, and this is a journey, right? It doesn't happen like a right away. I wouldn't say that we are there 100%. So we are trying to imagine our whole IT systems and solutions as things that we can kind of break into capabilities that unambiguous assignment of teams can own that, can have a life cycle and vision for it, and they feel empowered and they own that, and that's what we think is going to help us have a much better kind of federated ownership development and ready for consumption, API-based, ready for consumption of those IT capabilities for it to be achieved in any experience.
Yeah, and at Apigee we have a way of talking about this we call the digital value chain.
Right.
And so at the center of the digital value chain are APIs, and those APIs are the technical contract between the developer of applications and the API team who's implementing those the functions and capabilities of those APIs. And the goal is to by having this contract and the infrastructure around APIs and enablement of APIs, that we can more rapidly innovate in the developer building apps that go to the customers, which is going to allow the customers to do more business with your through the product, through this API product. At the same time, the API team is, as you said, it's federated, decentralized, and capable of iterating on top of those APIs without having to affect the development, the ongoing development and maintenance of those apps that the customers are using in their interaction with the back-end systems. And so by decoupling these things, they can run at different speeds, right? That's one of the things we talk about a lot is two-speed IT, where we know that back-end systems and line of business systems, they, for very good reasons, they iterate slowly. They're hard to change. There's a lot of business process, particularly around compliance and other items. But the way people want to consume that information is going to iterate much more rapidly. And so we want to decouple those through the use of APIs so that the developers, be they internal developers, external developers, or partner developers, are able to produce innovative applications so that they can do business in innovative ways with the customer.
Yep, absolutely. And while doing that, when we talk about like multiple teams and multiple stakeholders, it's a big challenge to do the right sizing or modularization of these components so that they can be managed and have their own life cycle. But also it has some consistency, right? So you can definitely break it down into different teams and ownership, but how do you achieve consistency? That's where further along we'll see how standards-wise, how we thought that the standards are critical to achieving this. So in a digital value chain, like Paul just kind of went through for everybody, we are using the API management became the key to achieve this, and we are using the Apigee technology for our API management platform. And we have experimented with it quite a bit, and we have had various use cases implemented through it. We kind of at this stage of our experience, we have kind of trying to leverage this core strength, which is the policies and API management. And as we go in next few slides, I'll touch upon how it fits into overall IT landscape there. But these are the kind of strengths and policies that we leverage from our API management layer. And then we have the microservices, which are the smaller modular breakdown that we implement underneath it that are enabled through these APIs. And these, I don't believe we need to touch upon any of them in too detail. I think these are definitely industry practices, and folks use these with some variation or the other.
Yeah, I think so. And these are the kinds of functions that Apigee Edge can implement pretty easily on top of the APIs, and with a sound build practice can be included and tested for across the API suite. So, and I think that's where the enabler was that you were talking about there.
Yep, definitely. So process-wise, I think now we try to break down a little more onto how we approach this. So there are not one kind fit all kind of APIs that we felt is necessary. So we have this life cycle diagram that kind of shows that we have experience APIs, we have capability APIs, and all these are kind of packaged in in a capability ownership. And all these go through the standard life cycle as it can be represented here. Like in the API, we are calling it as an API first approach, where taking a customer journey at the top, we very early on in the stage, we try to come up with the APIs that help achieve those customer journeys in a frictionless way. And then we iterate on it using the supporting tools and portals that portal and the design process that we take it through, where you have an initial contract, you go through the design sessions, try to vet it against all the possible use cases that it needs to support, and iterate its life cycle and take it to the completion. So, so all the aspects of microservice style development and agile development is what enables this. We are going through like a CI/CD and the tooling that goes around with it, and that in fact was one of the things that we touch upon, that using Apigee helps us achieve that as well, that it is tooling aligned in those senses.
So hey, Himanshu, there were a couple of questions I thought that were relevant here. The first question was, I think you might have a later slide on it, but the audience wants to know, how have you implemented microservices and what sort of the strategy and technology direction there? And then the second question after that would be, you talk about experience APIs. Can you just define a little bit more as to what you mean by experience APIs? And maybe, Paul, you might want to chime in as well.
Sure. Yeah. So first I would I'd go and give my take on the experience API. There are many kind of terminologies that various people use in the industry. Some call it engagement API, some call it custom. But a RESTful design that we have experienced, it's easier to, like, designing API detached, if that's the word I can use, detached from like experience, a little detached from experience, and purely focused on the resource or the underlying representation of an entity in a purest form would be what we call as a capability or the resource APIs. And when we try to kind of achieve the optimal use of that from a user experience perspective, where we need to either put together completely unrelated resources together to have a better user experience via an API, is what we, in my view, is the experience API categorization that we are using that terminology. Paul, if you want to chime in anything.
Yeah, sure. So the experience APIs, this is maybe a little bit different than what Himanshu just said, and I actually think that's okay. I think as every organization or developer is going through these processes, they're going to find definitions for these things that work best in their specific case. And so I don't think that there's any one definition that is perfect and true across the board. But generally speaking, these capability APIs, as Himanshu said, they tend to represent the resources, the base level resources that are being used in order to build up an application. An experience API is for those cases in which, like, you have a landing page and you know you're going to need to make 6 or 8 calls. Rather than making 6 or 8 round trips, you can make one call to an API, building out that landing page, and that would help in the network latency respect. You may also at that point choose to constrain the amount of data that are, the fields that are going back or that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. So before we go on to the other question that I sorry, Himanshu. Before we go on to the other question with regards to implementing microservices, there was a follow-up with regards to experience APIs that I wanted to get in and get Paul's perspective, which is, do we need to use only Apigee for developing the experience APIs? So, Paul, if you can have some thoughts around that, that would be great. Okay, seems like Paul might have had some audio difficulties.
Yeah, so I would just chime in. Obviously, these are concepts and design practices. Whatever tools work for you, you can definitely use that. Apigee is what we are using for the exposure layer. But you definitely have choices that either from your implementation of the microservice layer or any other tools that works best for you. So going to, and to round off on that experience and capability, we definitely, and this slide illustrates that point as well, we definitely are trying to have APIs that can be consumed as much as possible from the topmost layer. But when needs arise is when we go for experience API. So it's not always that it's completely experience API is what UIs or our API consumers would consume, but it's a healthy mix of that and for design consideration and need basis. Going further into this diagram that I am sharing here to give us some context on how things overall fit, and that was another question that you had now was how are we doing microservices? And that again is a lot of design is what is more critical than any tools or platforms. People have choices, plenty of choices these days to do it. What we are using is underneath API management, we are building cloud-native applications, and that enables us a flexibility of either deploying it on Cloud Foundry that we are trying to use, as well as other cloud platforms, AWS or otherwise, and that flexibility is the key because we need to achieve the speed. So there is no one prescriptive way of doing things, but these are the logical divisions that we have, and one of the patterns that I show here of the interaction of two microservices via an experience API. And we haven't really drawn out at each and every layer the gateways that these APIs come through. And we have purposefully done that because we want to show the intent here rather than the true network hops and other things. And inter-microservice, we think that it doesn't always have to go through gateway. Wherever it makes sense is what approach we are taking. But we are constantly learning about what either statistics or usage or other details that is needed. Based on that, we adjust our approach to which communication needs to go through gateway and which can happen across the microservice without gateway. So these are just the patterns that we have. Yep.
No, I said great. Thank you for answering that, and then you can move on to.
Sure. Thanks.
Yep.
So obviously people will have their own patterns and what works best for them. There are many variations that can be had of this paradigm, and people have to make sense of their environment and design solution accordingly. So key takeaway at this point is organizing things. What is an experience API? What are the resource-based APIs and how they are categorized using capabilities, which underlying concept being people, process, and technology. Using all these three aspects, how we are delivering APIs at T-Mobile. I'll go further into the consistency aspect of it, how we are trying to achieve consistency in our APIs. So I think this is, I'm sure everyone who tried to do REST at scale would have faced this. REST itself being a guideline and everyone having opinions and strong based on their experience and how you interpret it to be the right REST or not, whether something is RESTful or not. That definitely was like a kind of a major thing that we kind of went through and experienced ourselves. And we resolved that by like a lot of brain cycle was spent on it. We collected a lot of feedback, internal as well as external, and we have developed a common guidelines document which cover the typical use cases, scenarios, and design practices that teams should follow. And key to its success is how many teams and folks are kind of contributing to those ideas so that they feel they are kind of exposed to it and they feel they're more used to the guiding principle that this document talks about, and more you can have like inputs and communication across. That definitely helps the usage of and practices of those documents. And governance around this is one thing that we have, but we advise each organization or teams to think about their own, because striking a right balance of governance versus enforcement, that becomes really striking the right balance is the key. Using the similar pattern, we developed the guidelines that help the developers build on the platform, both a gateway platform as well as microservices platform, a consistent way of doing things so that our code quality is good. We have the guidelines that help us capture the interactions that we have with our operations and platform support teams, as well as a consistent way of onboarding users and partners onto these platforms. So these documents, processes, and thought processes has helped us. We have had a good success with this so far. It's obviously it's not. There is no, I would say, final. These things are living documents based on learnings and practices. We constantly improvise, improve ourselves, and revisit decisions that make sense.
Yeah,
so
it's important to say that the way we think about governance is little g governance, which is I think best put in that sense of a guardrail, but not a sense of hard and fast rules or a really strict process. So, like for instance, one process that some people might be familiar with is the TOGAF architecture gateways. That would be an example of a big G governance that gets in the way of development and slows it down, versus guidelines and kind of rules of thumb that are useful for developers who are trying to innovate rapidly, which is, I think, where T-Mobile has gone with their little G governance model.
So that flows into the question that I had, Paul and Himanshu, from one of the audience members is there a governance body to ensure consistency of APIs across all capabilities and experiences? And I think, Paul, if you're alluding to the big G governance as opposed to small G governance, if you can just elaborate a little bit on how that is being addressed, that would be great.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Paul.
I think from the Apigee standpoint, we want teams. You would like to have teams that are self-sufficient and able to kind of come up with structures that work well for them. Now, having said that, you're right that there is a really strong need to have consistency in the way that resources are exposed, because both of those things are really important for frictionless implementations. And they're, in a sense, they're a little at odds at one another. And so in a larger organization, you will have representatives, probably is a better term than a body, that isn't really there to approve or disprove, but more there to provide guidance on best practices. I think that's the direction that...
Yeah, I would like to add there that in my experience, I would say that many a times way of doing things at the outset, if you are getting feedback from other teams, may seem like they are not aligned, but it's more time spent in explaining and understanding why we are doing or recommending things to what we are. Usually there isn't still a disagreement at the end of it, but spending that time and like a dialogue is the more critical and useful activity in this. And more of that we can have either through external meet of groups and document share and any other avenues that works for folks, the more frictionless it will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Summarizing our API program so far, things that worked well for us and easy to adopt. I have these things out there. People, based on their scope of the program, what they have in the API management or in the API program, in the microservices layer, and how they are executing things. All those things matter, and they will have either similar or different experiences. And the critical suggestion in the last row I would try to give is the things that I think we already touched upon the REST design patterns as how critical it is to get alignment on. Other thing would be the security. Security in SaaS is definitely a kind of argument, but that's now less of a challenge with all the certifications of platforms in SaaS. More, I think, the design security considerations, I think I would like to advise, which I haven't listed out here. Considering what design would work for security, we recently ourselves went through kind of reassessing our design to make sure it was security compliant, be it how you expose how you design the URIs, what kind of things you pass in the query parameters or headers or in the body. So that would be another thing that I would like to suggest folks to keep in mind. Moving on to next. Yeah.
Himanshu, sorry, again, I'm just keeping an eye out on the questions. And the topic of security was interesting because you touched on the design aspect. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the security design for these APIs as it relates to PCI or consumer data? Right? If you can just spend maybe a minute on that.
Yeah. So and it is highly contextual, but obviously there will be some aspect of data that you consider near and dear to your business or due to other regulations or your confidentiality or your strategic advantage. There could be various classifications due to which you classify some data to be treated differently than others. So how you handle such data, either in the how you design entities and resources around them, how you expose them, how you you have authorizations policies around them. So our APIs have authorizations built upon it, where we understand who the caller is, what should the scope of their responses should be. Even if a resource is there, we have authorizations on top of it. So various folks, I mean, the key point takeaway here in my suggestion is that what is it that you need to treat differently, and how you can manage the exposure based on the authorization model.
Yeah, and just to pop in on that real quick, from kind of a general organizational standpoint, particularly around PCI, there's a couple of aspects. First of all is your PCI compliance team should have a data classification document. And that document should list out the kinds of data classifications and identifying which parts or which data are PHI, or not PHI, PII, PCI, or what combinations of data are critical to be handled separately, and those kinds of things. And then to make sure that you have appropriately handled those according to best practices. Like there's a whole suite of best practices that OWASP has that you can relate to how they get used in APIs, and then making sure that the tool set that you use is also been certified for that use. So I'll give you an example that the Apigee Edge product is PCI certified, and so we can handle PCI sensitive information. There are other systems that are not, and so it becomes important then from a technical lead or technical architect to understand what those are and be able to implement those accordingly.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, guys.
So I think the lessons and the ideas that we would like to share with others, the things that we haven't covered is the data model. So that I think is a very key to any API program. Every teams and every organization has to kind of spend time and decide on that, as how much of a consistency and consistency and reuse. I think there is a very fine line. People would often classify one versus other. So to churn out an API and expose it is much. It's not a technical challenge. It's very easy to do. But how that API fits with what else you are trying to convey through your other API offerings, and how you represent that resource in that interface versus any other interface that you have dealing with a similar resource. I think that's consistency, how you achieve that, what is the tools and practices that you need to put together to achieve that. It's definitely a challenge, and it's definitely a big task that we spend a lot of our time on to do what's right. We may be sacrificing a little bit of speed on that, but I think it's important that we achieve consistency. Where we are headed, I think portal, the dev portal, we have it internal and we have external of it. We are gaining parity on that. We want to be able to have all these APIs available for all the developers to use externally as well. So that's one of our major focus, and we are working very hard on that. The digital layer that I shared earlier, what is the right balance of what functionality we achieve from which layer. that is a constant architectural conversation, and all the teams and senior developers influencing that are engaged in the conversation, and we constantly adjust that. And federation of this API development, I think that's another thing that we have started on that, and we are gaining momentum on that, but it's not really completely federated yet to the level that we would like to reach. So that's the areas. And self-serve using multiple offerings. So we have these API programs will serve and enrich our API portal that will be the T-Mobile portal, but we also partner with Twilio's development platform, and a lot of our network capabilities are also available through Twilio, and those can be consumed as well. So we are completely focused on API being the way to help us get the uncarrier on the inside, is what we call, where we do things differently and achieve the goal in a different way.
Can you elaborate briefly on what it means to have a portal and what that does for an organization?
So portal is, I think, what we it means the different things to different people, and that's the challenge, I would say. How much you want it to be weaved into your development framework, how the code automatically pushes itself out there. But it is definitely the bare minimum we expect out of a portal is a self-serve aspect of discovering what is out there and how you can consume it. How much self-serve we can make it is only left to imagination, right? So that is where we are trying to drive it to be self-serve. But what all features can be added there is open for imagination.
Yeah, so generally when the Apigee portal uses, we have the ability to do the smart docs, which reads the documentation from the specifications, and it makes that available to the users so that there's very little out of sync between the documentation and the implementation. It allows developers the ability to register developer accounts and use Sandbox and Live, and so that basically your administrative overhead is lower, so that you can increase the scale of developer usage.
Correct. Yep. So anything that we can automate and make it self-serve for external as well as internal API consumers, that definitely helps overall. So parting or concluding this webinar, few things that these are the key things that I have listed here that each teams and interested folks in this API program can kind of make use of. But in the end, we have to always keep the kind of the end goal in mind, that we have to build something that is sustainable, that is robust, and follows a good design principles. So if we keep that in mind, that what we are building is what we have to support and own, we will be doing a good job, and all our solutions would be right. So with that, I think I would conclude the presentation. We can go into any other audience question, Pranav, that we may have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there's maybe one or two questions that I'll throw out to you from the audience. The first one is, again, thank you for presenting all of this, but the question is your entire digital journey running on these principles? For example, microservices triggered through APIs, and the API capability libraries that help in reuse, simplification of the architecture, and improving time to market. So basically, is the entire digital journey going down this path and using these principles?
Yes. So we are going towards that. That is what we are solutioning all our APIs in that model. But as far as the gateway aspect of it, I think, like I touched upon, that we are internal the processing layer communication. We are seeing and evaluating whether it makes sense to have a gateway there or not between the two processing engines, and we do that case-by-case basis.
Great. There was another interesting question that came up earlier in the context of microservices, which was, what are the advantages of using Apigee compared to writing your own microservices with tools like Visual Studio or anything else? And basically, I think one thing that it would be great for you to elaborate in answering this question is really how it's not necessarily an either or a comparison, but sort of a complementary thing, and your perspective on that would be great.
Yeah, I'd like to take a first shot at this one and say that, I think it's great that you can use any microservice backing that you like. So T-Mobile has chosen to use Pivotal Cloud Foundry. If you choose to use, the .NET web services layer, then that's fine too. The thing that Apigee is going to give you on top of that is it gives you a consistent way to build out those little G governance items. So making sure that authentication and authorization is consistently handled, that there's good analytics consistently handled, that you have the ability to do this kind of, before it even enters the microservice, you can do things like you can check for threats, and in that system, you can do things like quotas and spike arrests, user-based quotas, role-based quotas, kinds of things, on top or in Edge in a consistent way across all your APIs. And then the developer who's doing the hard work of implementing the connections to the backend systems doesn't have to think about that as much.
I think only thing I would like to add, my view on that, or T-Mobile's view on that would be that if there are few standard boilerplate things that can be achieved through tools, like there is no your way of doing things, then definitely suggest to look at how best you can do that without having to invent that, and focus time on writing the business logic and things that really is critical. I think that's the approach we have taken, and that's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Himanshu, very much. I know there are some other unanswered questions, but in the interest of time and to be respectful of everybody's time, I would like to sort of conclude that. But before we end it, just wanted to also remind everybody who is attending this webinar and webcast that we have an Adapt or Die World Tour as part of that World Tour, an event coming up in Chicago, and would highly encourage, especially if you're going to be in that area, to go ahead and register at adapt.apigee.com. Once again, thank you, everybody, including Himanshu and Paul, for not only presenting, but also to the audience members for attending this. A lot of this content that was shared today will be available in a variety of forums that Apigee will publish to. But once again, thank you very much for everybody's time. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.